I love myself a good survival horror anime, and when I first saw Higurashi no Naku Koro ni, I fell in love with it. It had all the things that drew me to Another, to Mirai Nikki, to Corpse Party, but it was better. It was the first anime that actually genuinely gave me a creepy vibe. To me, nailing horror in animation is extremely hard because you have the idea of fiction working against you. Unlike with a live-action horror movie where we see real people, or a book where we can imagine a real situation unfolding, we're watching an animated set of images move and it can break immersion much easier. But Higurashi was a first for me, and man, not only was it creepy, but it had a good story and characters on top of it. I was hooked on this show. So inevitably I learned that it was based on a visual novel of the same name, and being visual novels aren't my particular favorite form of entertainment, I had to settle for the unacceptably mediocre Umineko adaptation when I wanted to get more out of the story. One day I'll probably read the visual novel, or the manga. I'm sure they're both way better experiences than the anime, and my views on VNs changed a little since then. So it's not out of the question, but that's neither here nor there. Those of you who are fans of the series probably know most of this already, and I'm just rambling, so let me get to the point. I remember a few years back I heard there was going to be a new manga entry into the franchise called Hotarubi no Tomoru koro ni, and honestly, I totally forgot about it. But I'm kind of glad I forgot about it because it just recently ended back in February and it still hasn't finished being translated into English. It's only a 22 chapter manga, and of the making of this video, it only has 14 of those chapters translated. Hotarubi no Tomoru koro ni is probably the most horrific that I've seen this franchise. Its basic premise is really similar to Umineko, in which a family visits a remote location. Unlike the Ushiromiya family visiting their private island of Rokenjima, the family of Hotarubi visits an old home of one of the grandmothers in preparation for a wake. Located in Hirasaka, Japan, and brimming with ancient folklore, we set foot on the survival adventure I've always wished for. Higurashi antagonist Mio Takano returns as a guide for the family, and seemingly this takes place in an alternate reality to Higurashi. The story itself begins in Showa year 58, or 1983, after the Sea of Japan earthquake, which would tie into one of the possible plot points mentioned in the very beginning of the manga, the March 2011 earthquake and tsunamis that affected Japan's Tohoku region, as most of the meat of the story takes place later in 2016. Unlike Higurashi and Umineko that primarily deal with the power of witches and the stories behind them, Hotarubi takes a completely different route despite its similar setup. On the night of the wake, the grandmother resumes her life and escapes the Hirasaka home. What awaits the family in the morning is literally hell on earth. You see, Hirasaka isn't a real modern-day Japanese town, but the location of it does actually exist within Matsue City in Japan's Shimane Prefecture. Hirasaka, or what would be in the legend Yomotsu Hirasaka, is a location referenced in large by many Japanese myths as the entryway to the world of darkness, Yomi no Kuni, a world ruled by deity Izanami no Mikoto, sealed off by the deity Izanagi. If you've consumed enough Japanese media, you may actually be familiar with this tale as it was used in popular Japanese role-playing game Persona 4. This tale is only the beginning of what Hotarubi has to offer. As the characters themselves travel through Hirasaka, they learn more of the story. However, this Japanese tale is not the only one at work, as the family recalls an ancient Buddhist tale of hell. There's a certain pattern of kanji used sometimes to describe Yomi that actually refers to the Chinese underworld Diyu. Diyu is divided into multiple layers, and this is part of yet another legend in Hotarubi. It's not hard to sin under Buddhist ideals, or more specifically, all go to Diyu after death. Hotarubi specifically uses the hot narakas, where heat-based punishments are primarily used. The survival of this family is based around the punishment of the hot narakas of Diyu. From toxic gas to the undead, They have to find new shelter constantly in search for food, water, and other life. Nothing is quite what it seems for this family, and not all of them will make it out alive. Well, that's of chapter 14 at least. Maybe none of them make it out alive. Maybe Takano comes to save the day, unlike her doing in Higurashi. But part of me still doesn't even trust her, even if this is a Takano that never visited Hinamizawa. I'd love to say that that's all Hotarubi has to offer. But there's one more, albeit minor, detail that really latched on me with this. The cast is extremely diverse in age. Children, parents, and grandparents all have their own roles in the story, and each of them have their own motivations. But one of them really stuck to me. A NEET named Yukito. When you take everything into account, being transported to Yomotsu Hirasaka, having a NEET character, and these being your general everyday kind of people, we have the perfect setup for your common isekai show. But Hotarubi does something with the NEET character that I've never seen done before in an anime or manga with all these requirements. It somewhat explores his psyche. Sure, you have the entire Welcome to the NHK series that does the exact same thing, but Hotarubi actually gets into the head of why some of these NEET protagonists think the way they do. This part includes spoilers, so feel free to move to the timecode on screen if you wish to skip this part. Yukito is originally introduced as a complete recluse, a good-for-nothing NEET, and a liability to the family. When the events of Hotarubi begin to pick up and the family learns that even opening the doors of their home for a few seconds can be dangerous, Yukito's sister Yue begins to cook some rice. However, because of the story taking place in the summer, the windows and doors closed, and we have the theme of the hot narakas, the house begins to feel like a sauna described by Yukito's cousin Terumi. Her and Yue get into an argument over having the windows open, and it eventually erupts into an argument with Yukito. Terumi claims, "You really like this, don't you?" Yukito clenches his fist and slaps Terumi across the face. Her brother, Teruya, then breaks the fight up. For the next couple chapters, Yukito is faced with the morality of his thoughts. Does he really think like this? Is he taking control of this situation because he cares about his family, or because this is essentially a new life for him? We later see that on the aforementioned 311 earthquake, Yukito was helpful in this time of need, seemingly only coming out of his reclusive state when he can bring something to the table and help others. It's not really a huge thing, but it was a nice addition to the constant barrage of NEET characters that we see. I would love to see an anime adaptation of this, as it has so much potential to be great, though I'm not sure how realistic that is with how the Umineko anime adaptation was received. If a new team were to tackle this, or those who learned from their mistakes of Umineko did, I could see it doing really well. But for now, we'll just have the manga to experience the glow of the fireflies.